guys, we're back with another edition of Blockchain Council podcast. This time we have Riaz joining us, I believe, all the way from Toronto.
That's right. How's everyone doing?
Pretty good, man. Midweek blues, I must say, at this point in time. The market's a little iffy. So, yeah, hoping for the best. Bear market's the best time for builders, and hence we've got you online right now.
Totally makes sense. That's we care about building something new and exciting, and so it's sometimes it's hard to remove the day-to-day ups and downs of the market, but builders focus on building value for customers, and that's exactly
definitely. I've been passively following the market now as opposed to same time last year, because obviously a lot of our efforts are going into building stuff now, building communities, getting in touch with people, networking, and so on and so forth. So
That's right.
Quickly to move ahead, if we could have like an intro about you, how you got here, what your journey's been like.
Yeah, I'm Riaz Lalani. I'm the founder of Gambit. Gambit is a Web3 crypto-powered fantasy sports experience, and I've spent the better part of my career building consumer products. Spent some time at Zynga building games, where I worked on some very large games like Words with Friends and Chess with Friends, and spent some time as well in sports, which is where I came to love fantasy sports at a company in North America called 𝗪𝗏, which is kind of like your sports news and stats apps. You can follow your favorite teams and athletes and know the scores at your fingertips on your mobile device. And there I built a fantasy sports experience. I worked on building the first sports bot on Messenger. So I partnered with Facebook early on and was one of the first 16 bots on that platform. Like many, I started my crypto journey in 2017, started with buying. But last year, I really got, red pilled is what they say, and excited about the possibilities of what we can build. And fundamentally, really thought about what made sense for me. And so, Gambit is kind of, a combination of my past experiences and my passions. And I love sports. I've played sports all my life. I've watched sports all my life. And some of the best times I've had were building in that industry. And so I've taken what's the best of Web3 and applied it to some of the core challenges I found in some of the existing Web2 and Web3 fantasy sports experiences to build Gambit.
For sure. I think one thing a lot of us, even our listeners, they resonate to your story is, after you've been, buying a bunch of crypto and you've been holding it for a while, and you understand the implications of the technologies and its application, it sort of at some point in time, you're like, you have to get into this industry in terms of, leaving your day job behind, or how to incorporate it in your day job is something a lot of people out there are actively thinking about. So that's definitely something a lot of us would resonate with.
For sure.
Yeah, you were saying?
No, I was going to say, there are moments in time where, big technology shifts are opportunities, right? And so being in tech for the last 10 years, this happened when mobile devices started, when we first started to see the iPhone and Android devices, and being part of that journey throughout my career was huge. And so when I started to learn about crypto, it felt the same way, that same type of energy of really, really smart folks, transitioning a lot of their time and their energy to understanding crypto, and then, now building in crypto and Web3.
Yeah, that was definitely there. I think last week, the second half of the week, I was at the Solana Hacker House events. And I must have had at least 30 people come up to me reciting the projects. And I think half of them started with, we're building the world's first, blah, blah, blah. I haven't seen that in one room ever. I was just blown. Yeah. I'm sure half of those projects might not be legit, but still, I've never seen that much of hope and promise in one particular location ever. It was quite something to experience.
And you just went to one hacker house, so there's so many globally, right?
Exactly.
So
happening like on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
I believe after Delhi, the Solana team actually moves to Lisbon for the hacker house there. And then there's Breaking Points. Then they're going to Bogota and a bunch of other cities worldwide. So it's a really promising space, and especially when you start following these guys on Telegram and see what the different communities were up to, the kind of projects that they had. It's quite an experience.
For sure, for sure.
So just to give background to our listeners, what exactly is fantasy sports? What are we dealing with here?
I mean, so to put it simply, fantasy sports has been around for a long time. Started in North America, but the goal of fantasy sports is to connect, sports fans to athletes and sports teams, like at a very high level. That's what it is. But how they accomplish that is every sports fan to a certain extent wants to be a coach or a GM, wants to make decisions on who to play. And so fantasy sports kind of takes that model and says, okay, well, now you can select which players you want to use in a competition. And so, a set of contests are created where, all the participants can choose the athletes that they want to participate in the contest. And it's the actual real life performance of those athletes, their on field or on court performance that determines the outcome of these contests. And so it gets really exciting, and certainly it's a very much a second screen experience for any sports fan. So if you're watching a football game, a cricket match, a basketball game, you're watching it on your TV or live, or with some friends. You pull out your phone and you're following along because you selected players in your lineup. You're a part of it, right? Like there's an adrenaline rush, a dopamine fix that comes to being a part of this competition and participating. And obviously the rewards are great because a lot of these models, especially in Web2, it was play to win, where you would put some money in and you'd win. And so the way we're thinking about it, play to own is actually what I call it, not play to earn, is where you own tokens of various athletes, and you can then repurpose them in various game modes and contests and participate that way.
For sure. And one thing I'm really interested in, the kind of models you guys are following, the way the data collection is happening. Can real world teams actually use this data, the kind of decision making some fans? Because some of these fans might be better than the coaches or the managers, right?
Yeah. I mean, I haven't seen that. Anything is possible is what I usually say. But the difference is, in a real world sports, you've got one team that's got a set of players, right? When we're talking about fantasy sports, a lot of times there's a mix of games and matches, and you're selecting a set of players from various matches. So, there is no direct application to, I'm a coach of a specific team and who do I play? But certainly, there's data on popularity, who the audience thinks is the better player, who's going to contribute the best on court or on field results, right? And so you start to see that play out. You'll have various participants choose the athletes that are well known, that that everybody kind of knows and they want to own and they want to play with. And then you'll have folks that are looking at the actual sports data, the historical matches, the matchups, who's playing who, how did they what were the results in previous games, and taking all that information and coming up with their lineups in a more analytical way. And so it's pretty amazing to see various styles of how people think about fantasy sports. It's a industry of itself. There's content providers, there's blogs, there's videos, there's a lot of information out there for folks who participate in these types of games.
Sure. And is it true that, I used to be a sports fan at some point in time, so I would be only interested majorly in what my team is doing. But is it true that a fantasy sports enthusiast would need to follow the entire season, the entire league? I mean, is that the route they want to take?
It depends. There's various different flavors of fantasy sports, right? And so, the popularity of fantasy sports started with a season-long format, which is, at the start of a season, me and a group of friends are going to draft our teams, in a very sort of collaborative and ritualistic way. It's like it's a draft day, and we'll all get together, and we'll choose our teams. And
it's a little difficult for the audience to understand, but they are diehard fans who actually do this. They go out of their way. They'd be watching the college football, college soccer, and actually predicting which players are going to hit the main stage.
That's right. And so with season long, you're following your team along every season, and you're competing with your friends, week after week, right? And so that creates this social nature to season-long fantasy. A newer flavor of fantasy sports is daily fantasy sports, where you don't necessarily need to follow along for a whole season, but you can select your athletes and participate in a contest that is only, you know, a day, a few days, or a week long, which kind of shortens the time span for you to get to an actual result and see if you're a winner, and allows you to focus on just the specific matches that are being played. But, you know, to your initial point, yeah, I think ultimately a lot of fantasy sports players know about their favorite team, but they're willing to learn about other teams as well.
Definitely. And, you know, that now that we're talking about this whole social aspect, and what's the need for community building in Web3? I mean, how does this Web3 platform of Gambit differ from what's currently out there?
I mean, community building is kind of, you know, a core tenet of Web3 and a lot of the experiences that you see, right? And so myself, I built a lot of products in Web2, and it was very much, you know, let's build something and let's release it in a soft launch or an alpha and learn, where, you know, we kind of had to flip it for Web3, where it's like, I want to find those, you know, that you call the 1,000 passionate fans. You know, let's find those folks that are interested in our ideas.
Super fans.
Yeah, super fans early on, right? And so you find these passionate fans, and you let them participate in your building, right? And so you know, especially in the Web3 world, everybody wants to, you know, be involved in something interesting. And so, you know, we've done that through our Discord. We've got a bunch of folks in our Discord, and more recently, you know, we started an ambassador program where we took, you know, I think about 30 of our most engaged players, and have brought them into our inner circle, you know, talking with me and the folks on my team to help us with, you know, one, creating exciting content for the community itself, for translations, because we have audiences in India, Indonesia, Vietnam, and so, you know, they're participating.
Global, it's a truly global audience software, yeah.
That's right. And so they're helping us grow and have the resources for us to grow efficiently across all these you know, regions of the world, and they feel ownership and feel empowered in their position to do so, which is absolutely amazing. The response that we've gotten from a lot of these folks, they're so passionate about what we're building. It's just very exciting.
So currently, I believe, you know, I checked out your Discord. You've got around about 20K members there, and from the website, it feels like, well, it was written clearly that you guys are in beta phase. So
That's right.
Does your goal for community management change as you go from beta into a full-fledged alpha, into a full-fledged launch?
So certainly, I think, you know, in our beta, and we do this, you know, intentionally, we want to learn about our game mechanics. We built something very innovative, and so we wanted a closed public beta, and so, you know, you can get in through a wait list, or if you're invited in, and it gives us an opportunity to learn about our product, but also, you know, find those super fans. And so as we go to, you know, broader markets and a larger launch, you know, there's certainly opportunity for us to scale our community efforts, right? We're going to get larger. We're going to need, you know, more resources for moderation and create more new and exciting things for each of our community members and our ambassadors. And, you know, at some point, it'd be amazing to scale our ambassador program to thousands of folks that, you know, are engaged with Gambit and are, you know, playing with their friends, playing with their family members, all of that.
For sure. So, you know, I just want, the reason you're on right now is because we need regular Web2 entrepreneurs to understand the value of community building. So if you can just speak to, as you go into your alpha, what kind of incentives do these beta testers take with them into the alpha stage? And more people will join you in the alpha stage, and then they go into the main launch. So what's the reward system that you have for these guys that maybe other entrepreneurs could maybe ape from you?
Yeah, I mean, the reward system, I mean, we're just, you know, doing this for the first time and we're figuring it out, right? And so there's certainly rewards in token, like, which kind of makes sense for Web3. You know, we've got this Gambit token that we're releasing, and so part of that is incentives for doing, you know, positive value, things for Gambit, and that could present itself in various different ways. It could be a bounty board where there's very, very interesting tasks that we want to have our community members engage in. There's also beyond kind of the crypto incentives, there's access incentives, right? So the first to try out new game modes, new features, all of that. There is we're ideas and actually informing our product roadmap, and so we're building a system where the best ideas get rewarded, and so we're taking in ideas, we're listening to the community, and making sure that we've got a pulse on what they care about, having played our game and have played other games and have been very thoughtful about what the future of Gambit could look like. And so again, from getting feedback and ideas from our community, there's in-game attributes. You can say, like, we have contests in our game. We can name a contest. I can call this the Rohan 500, and you as a community member would be very, very excited to have a contest named after you.
I mean, I think user ranking and credibility for an individual who's part of a community is something major. And
that's
I think anyone who's been part of any Reddit forums for over a couple of years knows exactly what I'm talking about. How you have the rights to, maybe execute polls in a subreddit of 1 million people. That actually has value, real world value to it.
100%. And so, as you can tell from my examples, right, it's very multifaceted, right? You just, really, really thinking about what gets the community excited, that is unique, that you can give them for their support and the work that they're putting in to grow, not only the rest of the community, but the experience in the game and all of that, right? So that's very important. The other piece is, as we scale and mature, we'll get into the point where we'll, have our Gambit DAO, and we'll have some level of governance as well. And so our early players, our alpha players, our players that are playing in our beta right now are the earliest. They're the first folks that are going to have Gambit token.
They get first dibs on anything you come out with.
That's right. So they've been with us along the way. They've been rewarded for their gameplay because they're playing and they're earning. They're contributing to our community, which is another way to get that. And then moving forward, their Gambit token will be used in governance decisions, right? And so they get an opportunity to have a front seat in a lot of some of the decisions we make around token issuance, rewards, things like that.
For sure. So currently, as I pointed out, your Discord sitting at around 20,000. If overnight your Discord were to go to 100K tomorrow, what happens as a result? Like, for example, if my Twitter goes to 1 million tomorrow, I don't have to do anything. I'll just wake up, I'll see it, I'll be happy. But if your community goes to 100,000 overnight, what kind of challenges do you face?
Yeah. I mean, so I faced this before in kind of a previous version of a project where we went from 100 to 10,000 in our Discord overnight as an NFT project, and the biggest thing is you're getting an influx of people and there's not a lot of information, right? And so the first thing I would focus on is we need to get moderators. We need people to come and moderate and make the community feel like it's alive and there's folks there to answer questions, right? Because the attention half-life of people these days is very low, right? And so if someone's going to come in and all you see is hi, GM, they're going to leave, right? And so being able to obviously slow down, use slow mode and other sort of Discord like tactics to make it feel like a better experience. It's getting moderators in that can articulate what this Discord's about, what Gambit the community is about, what the game is about, all of that, and making sure that we have enough folks to do that, right? And I think that would be the number one thing is managing the people and their questions and informing them and creating some excitement for them as you blow up from 10,000 to 100,000. Second, I think there's we already do this, but we have a lot of channels in our Discord that are informative, right? And so here's the how to play, here's what how to start, what you need to know. It directs you to previous Medium articles, and so directing folks to places like that as they join as well is a very valuable exercise. But ultimately, the answer to your question is manpower, making sure that we have enough people to create an environment where people are very excited about what we're building and understand what we're building and what the community is about, and not necessarily a stream of GMs.
For sure. And would it be correct to say that there's no overnight success in Web3, and it is a community building process for whoever gets into a business that's in Web3?
Certainly. I mean, I personally, when we started Gambit, we started in the idea genesis was probably about October last year. We started building and developing in November, but we didn't launch our Discord until, I would say, March of this year. And if I were to go and rewind, I would have started my Discord in October. Like, I would have started there first. Even though it's small, it would have been a better experience to start with your community first. So 100% I agree that Web3 is about community. It's about finding folks to engage in the ideas and in the vision, the dream of what you're building, and try to get them as early as possible, because it amplifies your ability to execute, to learn, to do a whole bunch of things that, again, didn't exist in the Web 2 world. And so for me, it's a new paradigm of building, which is very exciting. For
sure. But this brings me back to the same issue. Is it scary to have all your eggs in one basket when it comes to Discord, at least? Is too much dependence on Discord going to be a problem?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say so. I mean, to be honest with you, Discord is where a lot of early, if you're attracting an audience that is very early crypto native, NFTs and DeFi protocols, like everything is on Discord. And so from a user's perspective, it's very easy for someone to say, I'm just going to go and join the Discord, right? And so from that perspective, a community acquisition perspective, I think it's the right place to start. Now, whether you continue to use Discord as the place as a forum for all things related to your project or your company, I mean, there's some questions around that. There's a lot of companies that have a Discord and a Telegram. There's a lot of companies that are building sort of in-game or in-app forums and things like that. That's something that I think Gambit, as we think about the future, and we think about how social is connected to fantasy sports, that we'll probably take a lot of these conversations, especially about the games and about the sports, into the app experience itself, right? Sure. And so it's a great starting point. There's a lot of people already circling kind of this Discord world, and it's easy to find them. But certainly the platform has some weaknesses in how it can deliver on kind of a.
Yeah, I'm actually getting to a very important weakness. So soccer is an evolved sport. It's been around for decades and decades. You have a lot of fans in soccer who might be on a 40 plus, 50 plus age group. And these guys know the game maybe better, in terms of the kind of decision making that has been done in the past. But for these older crowd, Discord's a little daunting, man. I mean, I remember my first try on Snapchat, and I was quite perplexed as to what to do. I mean, why the hell is my camera on? So, I can just imagine like a person of my dad's age or my mother's age trying to open Discord. They won't be able to use it the way, you and me.
Yeah. I mean, that's certainly going to happen. With Gambit, we're building something that is, accessible to kind of all age groups. The core fantasy sports demo is, I think it's like 18 to 35, right? And so there's less folks that are much older that are playing. But it isn't a requirement for anybody to be in the Discord to really get value out of what we're building, right? And so we're finding those older players through other mechanisms. Whether it's being on Twitter, Facebook, all these other channels that we'll leverage to get the word out and create kind of small pockets of communities in as well. And so from that perspective, it's it doesn't beat kind of having your own experience to have kind of a communal town hall or a forum, but it is at least in the early stages of Web3 a great place to start.
For sure. So one very interesting question I want to get to is, there's obviously a level of security that everyone's concerned about in the back end, how how your liquidity is and how safe it is and all that stuff. But what I'm more interested in, because the gameplay is such where for games like cricket and NBA Top Shots, stuff like that, people can actually write Python scripts and have bots open accounts on Gambit and, do a whole lot of funny stuff. So is that on your radar in terms of safeguarding gameplay against automation and machine learning?
Yeah, I mean, we learned early in our alpha that it exists, right? Like, there's a lot of people running scripts, and
is there a story behind this you want to get into?
I mean, there's no real story. In our alpha, we had a salary cap mode where you had a set of sliders, and there was a set of accounts that had the same lineup, and it was absolutely impossible, if you think about how this game is constructed, that these accounts would have the same lineup. And they're probably using some tool like Selenium, to move the UI and stuff like that. So we're actively looking at bots, preventing them. We've made it a rule in our Discord and our community, as well as others, that if you're found to be involved in a bot, we'll suspend your account and things like that. But you do one thing to stop them, they'll figure out how to go through that roadblock, right? And so it's going to be a never-ending kind of like process. But we're beefing up our ability to detect them, to take action.
Yeah, right? That was going to be my next question. So early detection is the only cure at this point in time.
Yeah,
careful scrutiny of just the winners in case somebody's a little too lucky than the rest.
Yeah, I mean, there's bot accounts, there's multi-account problems. They're not bots, but there's somebody who has a lot of time, and so they're going to exist. And we've, through our alpha and now in our beta, we're learning as we go, and we're finding ways to obviously stop them from joining in the first place. And then, as if they do join, our ability to detect is going to be more important.
Sure. And another thing I had about the gameplay itself, is it like at this point in time, there are a bunch of fantasy sport platforms out there. Is it possible for a user to have the same team across a number of platforms and hack all of them with the same team?
For us, we've got a unique model for fantasy sports where we have these athlete tokens. So they're if you had if you wanted to select a lineup for any of our contests, you would purchase these athlete tokens. So they're fungible tokens. I can buy one token, I can buy half a token, and so these tokens sit in a marketplace. And so that's very, very it's a proprietary to Gambit, but so you would have to buy those athletes and participate in our contest, which is a Gambit contest. But that wouldn't stop you from going to a Web2 fantasy sports and picking the same players, but you couldn't use, at this point in time, use our tokens in another application. Now when I think about the future, we think about these athlete tokens as this core primitive, right? And at some point in time where they'll be on chain, and as a result, we've got some of our token budget allocated to ecosystem investments, and this would be like potentially getting other developers to build on top of our platform, so using our athlete tokens in new game modes in unique ways. And so in the future, when we start to build a lot of different games around these athlete tokens, you'll start to see the ability to say, okay, well, now I own 10 athletes in Gambit, but I can play them in 5 or 6 different experiences right now, whichever one I choose, whichever one is most exciting for me to choose.
For sure. And where is Gambit on its current roadmap?
I mean, we're early. Like I said, we launched our alpha and just to learn about kind of the core mechanics and get some sense of product market fit in April. That was with the NBA playoffs, so it was a very small kind of limited test. We just launched in August with Euro football. So again, we made some interesting changes as a result of our learnings from our alpha. So we created a totally free to play mode, right? And so now anybody can come and play for free. So if you're a football fan, you can come and play Gambit for free and earn some Gambit token. And we did that intentionally because I don't know if you've seen this, but everything that you see. I mean, DeFi is obviously, you have to really go deep to actually understand that. But a lot of Web3 games, there's a consumer expectation that on day one, I'm going to buy some tokens, an NFT, spend some money, and then at the same time, learn a new game, right?
For sure.
And that's a lot on a new user, especially when we think about our goals of getting a lot of kind of normal people that aren't very familiar with crypto or lightly familiar with crypto into Web3. It's a lot of cognitive overhead, and there's a cost to it. And so our free-to-play mode allows us to do a couple of things. One, it teaches fantasy sports to that sportsman. So I can come in, I can play for free, and I can have the opportunity to work to earn. Right.
Definitely. I think that experience is definitely something that brings him closer to the community, and he wants to be there.
That's right. And so now that I've learned, now we can talk to you and educate you on the value of token ownership. Because if I start buying these athlete tokens, I am now in an elevated set of contests where I can earn more rewards, right? And so once I figured out the game, from our perspective, we're saying it's easier to take a free user and convert them to athlete token ownership into what we call our staking contests, where you use those athlete tokens in the contest. And so, if we weren't doing that, you'd have to learn essentially everything on day zero, right? And we want to make it so that people can learn at their own pace and then decide how they want to participate.
For sure. So you've dabbled in NBA, now it's soccer, and I believe you did say you have plans for other sports. Is there an algorithm that can judge like the complexity levels of a particular sport and its affinity to be hacked by a Python script? Is that something?
I mean, no, I've never thought of it that way.
For example, cricket operates on many more data points, and I think simulating actual results for cricket might be easier than soccer.
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on a couple of things. One is the game mode, right? Like, we define the rules of the game, right? So which stat categories, how many players you can enter into a contest, right? The actual mechanics of the contest, how you score, every entry. So those are all kind of rules that we define. And then, there's challenges. If you make a game too complex so that the bots, have a hard time figuring it out, you make it very hard for a casual user to pick up, right? Sure. And so there's certainly this balance where we want to make it so that it's really easy for somebody to pick up the game, select a lineup less than a minute on their mobile phone and start, right? It's like I'm waiting in line somewhere and I'm like, oh, I can just put my Gambit lineup in, right? Whereas if you start to make it complex and it's like, okay, it's going to take me 30 minutes to do this. I mean, maybe
there has to be that trade-off between security and ease of use.
That's right. And so I don't think that I personally don't think we think about security from the gameplay perspective, because the focus is to make gameplay fun, right? And security is something that we would need to layer on to make sure that things are secure and safe and can't be exploited. And I think that they're two different exercises. But if we were to go down the path of designing the games because of security, I think we just have some very complicated and perhaps uninviting games.
So, moving on to my next question, do you have like a vision of what Gambit might look like in a metaverse or its own metaverse? Is that something you think about?
Yeah, I mean, I've spent a lot of time. I mean, I spent a lot of time thinking about the metaverse, 100%. And there's certainly a world where you can take some of our primitives and have, a metaverse experience, right? So like these athlete tokens, could be represented in some unique way in the metaverse. My teams could be represented in a unique way in the metaverse. Even the contest. I mean, it's like, the analogy I like to think about, at least early on, is that, we're building an amusement park or an arcade. And so, when I think about the metaverse and kind of the 3D nature of it, is like I could be a participant in this arcade, navigating, all the various options with my community members and participating that way. Right.
Oh, definitely. I think the social aspects of it get built up,
Yeah.
and maybe they lead to something that you might not have even envisioned the way these people are using.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, we're certainly not a metaverse first company. I mean, it would be something that we would apply, as we grow and scale and see an
Definitely.
opportunity to participate.
But you do see that happening maybe 5 years down the line or something.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it could be as simple as me and my mates are going to go into the metaverse and watch a cricket match together, right? And
For sure.
like we build that experience and kind of Gambit's, whether it's
maybe have like
metaverse.
a Gambit widget popping out and informing you.
That's right. Yeah, and it could be in our own metaverse, or it could be our space or our land in another metaverse where people can participate with their community members in experiences that they'll enjoy. Yeah.
So Riaz, you made the shift from Web 2 to Web 3. A lot of people are planning on doing that. They're actually exploring the space. Blockchain Council is all about education, and we see a lot of the people doing a course are actually middle and upper management. So these guys are not going to look for jobs. These guys are actually trying to figure out how to incorporate Web3 into their actual existing businesses. So is there anything you want to speak to them? Are there any common pain points that entrepreneurs at your level in Web3 experience?
I mean, the biggest question I ask myself and constantly get asked is why do you need Web3 for this, right? I think it's really figuring out whether it's you're building something innovative or there's a need for ownership and composability and all the things that the blockchain delivers, is really clarifying where the opportunity is, right? And so a lot of early entrants into Web3 are doing it through buying land in metaverses and doing buying an NFT, and that's kind of their,
that's step one.
That's their crawl stage, right? And so as they now understand, one, the Web3 community, and two, understand kind of the value that can be generated from building on the blockchain and having things like NFTs, then they can start applying them to the experiences that their community, their customers, their constituents are going to love, right? And so I think the idea there is to certainly be thoughtful about how you could apply some of the value generating pieces of Web3 into your own customers' experiences that they will understand and get.
There's actually a very interesting audience question. So an anonymous user wants you to share community building tips for beginners. Should they be targeting core gaming communities or should they be targeting core crypto communities?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. I think, the core gaming community is certainly a tougher nut to crack, so to say. Like there's depending on the type of games that you're building.
I mean, they have their own allegiances on another level. I mean, they don't like switching.
Yeah. I mean, and there's polarizing point of views around the use of blockchain and gaming.
It can get pretty toxic, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So I mean, building with that community, if you're successful, I mean, it's going to be amazing, but it's certainly much harder. The crypto community, again, is very different. They're always looking for the next thing, looking to be part of something new. It's the reason that's how we built our initial community for Gambit is using the crypto community. And listen, not everybody you try to attract is going to be there for what you want them to be there for, right? So we talked about an airdrop in our initial campaign, and we got a whole bunch of people coming into our Discord and just putting their wallet addresses in, and we're like, hey, wait a second, like we're a game here, and you got to participate, and you'll earn it. And over time, when we get to this point in time where we have our token public, you're going to own some. Right. And so, but we were able to go and take a lot of those folks that, again, had an interest in sports, had an interest in crypto, wanted to belong to something, great and amazing, and believed in kind of the vision of what we're building in, start to participate in the community. It was the acquisition of those folks was much easier than the traditional gaming community.
Sure. And I do watch a bunch of sports. I've been following the crypto space for quite a while. This is an extremely competitive space, this fantasy game arena. Like you have a lot of big players who are actually trying to get into the space. So you want to speak as to about how you're handling this competitiveness? Do you have an edge over these guys? Is there something other people are missing?
Yeah, I mean, certainly have a strong point of view here. There's when you think about kind of crypto in sports right now, a lot of the games that you see are NFT based, right?
Yeah.
And so NFTs by virtue are very scarce, and so it certainly costs a lot of money. And you have a very popular game. Let's say there's a game 𝗖𝗴𝗲 that uses NFT trading cards and has a sort of a fantasy game tied to it. And so, they've got various levels of rarity of these cards. And if I want to buy, let's say, a Lionel Messi at the highest level of the game, I'm spending thousands and thousands, like tens of thousands of dollars, right? Like it's a lot of money.
And you're competing with bids from all over the world.
That's right. And so that makes the game inaccessible to your everyday fan, right? And so this NFT model, creates this environment where you've got this
the fractional buying issue.
The floor for anybody to start it becomes really, really high. And so what we've done is we said, well, one of the core things that we want to accomplish is that we make this game accessible. And so we use a fungible token model, and it's almost like it's a stock market for athlete tokens where I can buy some fractions, right? And that allows anybody who wants to come in with a small amount of money to participate, they can. Somebody who has a lot of money can come in and participate. Your whale can come in and participate. But from an operational standpoint, we can build experiences in games that cater to all those levels. And so, in an NFT where you're sort of climbing a ladder from a common to a rare to a super rare, right? For us, we've got more of a incline here, because you can start low, you can learn the game mechanics, you can win, you earn more Gambit, and then you can go and purchase more athletes or buy more of some of your existing athletes in the marketplace and compete at contests at a higher level that have higher prizes. And so we've got this much more smoother progression that exists that we can build around for our gameplay.
For sure. So Gambit, as I understand, it's on soccer, at least for this season, in the beta testing phase, is worldwide. What kind of problems do you face in different jurisdictions and on-ramping issues for a bunch of these players?
I mean, what do you mean by problems in jurisdictions?
I mean, like, for example, if somebody wants to be on Gambit in India, he's going to find it very difficult to actually transfer some liquidity onto his account to purchase the tokens or actually get into the gameplay the way it's designed. So what are your workarounds for that?
I mean, so right now we don't have a token, so we're using our Gambit token to learn in our beta phase. And so if you're invited to participate in the game, either through an existing invite or we pull you from our wait list, which is currently active, we give every new player some Gambit to start with, right? And so they can start participating, and there's the free contests, as I mentioned. So when they come in, they can play for free and earn Gambit over time. Now, as we transition to a world where we've got, a real token and the ability to bring value in and then take value out, we will have liquidity in various places, right? And so, the idea there is that there'll be decentralized exchanges where we've got liquidity pools for Gambit token. There's also, the desire to have centralized exchanges have Gambit token as well. And so in the early days of having that functionality, it'll largely be crypto based and then allow folks to participate that way. And then moving forward, the goal is to support kind of fiat to crypto payment methods and things like that, right? So there's Ramp and MoonPay and all these other experiences that you can go and take your fiat and bring it into crypto experiences. And so we'll get there over time, but initially it's having the Gambit token publicly available and having liquidity for it for folks to be able to participate.
One very interesting question that's coming out for the audience is how are you guys handling the player IPs? Because at this point in time, so many people are vying for these players and trying to get their attention.
Yeah, I mean, so we're not an NFT, so we're not a collectible. So we're creating any collectibles out of any of these athletes. And so, fantasy sports traditionally, they've been able to use kind of a player's headshot, their name, and their data as a game construct, right? So, for the game's purposes, we can use that data. We just have to use it in editorial context. So we can't, I can't have marketing images that say like, this, amazing football athlete is promoting Gambit or anything like that, right? But we leverage that information in the context of gameplay.
So it's like it's sort of a workaround at this point.
Yeah, I mean that's traditionally how it's worked. At least in North America, there's several fantasy sports providers that are leveraging data
and in fact,
the same
games
way.
like the NFL, I think it works brilliantly with fantasy, the way the stats work and everything. It's also got a lot of data points, just like cricket does.
That's right. And so, with that, to your IP question, it doesn't preclude us from having those conversations and building relationships with various teams and leagues and players associations.
I think at the end of the day, it's people talking about it, so you can't really do anything.
Yeah. I mean, there's that impact. I mean, having that relationship, and we'll be having those discussions in the future. But from a position of strength, we can talk to the audiences that we're building around any of these sports, and the interest we're generating as a way to start having a lot of these conversations. There's certainly value in having official relationships with any of these leagues and players associations.
For sure. And I believe you mentioned you've got a pretty tight team at Gambit. Do you guys operate out of an office, or is it a decentralized work environment where they're all over the place?
We're all over the place. We're all remote. We work from home. We've got some of our developers are in India. Myself, I'm in Canada. We've got a few folks in the United States. We operate 100% remote. And at some point in time we'll likely all get together.
This is where I want
to have an in-person session.
This is where I want you to talk to our audience, because there are a lot of traditionalists out there that want to shy away from the whole decentralization work aspect. But personally, I believe it can solve a lot of problems for you. The way the Western world can look at Africa and Asia as a pure resource provider. It gets sort of like a new lease of life. Earlier you had to bring people all the way to Silicon Valley. Now Silicon Valley can actually go to these guys.
I'm a big advocate of a global kind of workplace, in the sense that, in my Web 2 days building, games and products, like, finding talent locally was hard, right? And you had to and expensive and things like that. And now that you think about, I can actually have the smartest people in the world, work with me on a day-to-day basis is actually amazing. It kind of opens so many doors. And so I'm a big believer in having an environment where we support, that remote work, that decentralized kind of organization. But there's also, value in having an office place and having some sort of sense of a headquarters or whatnot.
Definitely, but that's always been done. That's the way we've been doing things. But
yeah. The face-to-face is great, like, especially around things like you want to think it through strategy and brainstorm and sort of get the team together and gel around, the vision and the ideas. Like, those things are much better done in person. But, I find, the act of building products, right? Like defining what to build, working with the development team, the developers working themselves, like they're very much happy working in their own environments, right? It's actually, a lot of times they're more productive in those environments because, especially when it comes to developers, there's less distractions, right? In the office place, there's a lot of distractions. And so, from my experience, a lot of the teams that I've worked with really appreciate the opportunity to work from home or wherever they are.
Definitely. We've got another question from the audience. So can you explain how growth hacking works, and particularly in a beta phase, what kind of things can you do to grow the community there?
I'm not a big fan of the term growth hacking in general. I think, trying to unlock new growth strategies is certainly a thoughtful exercise. And so just the context of a hack feels like it's,
it's just Web3 terminology. It feels nice saying hack for a non-coder.
Yeah, when it comes down to anything growth related, I think it comes down to understanding, who your audience is, and then figuring out what are the incentives that are going to drive their interest, right? So, in a lot of crypto, you see things like airdrops and things like that, because there's a large interest in that right now, right? You've seen
that's the most commonly used method right now.
Yeah, and you've also seen like some even some more sophisticated growth hacks like vampire attacks and things like that, where you're sort of distributing tokens to wallets that you've got information on and from the blockchain. And so there's going to be an evolving set of Web3 type growth hacks. I think there's no kind of silver bullet. And so when we think about it, it's really about understanding, who are the audiences that we can drive, and what are the right set of incentives that can help them, get through that front door, and one, learn about our community and experience what we've built, and then it becomes our challenge to keep them there and keep them engaged and keep them excited.
Definitely. And we're just almost coming to the end. Everyone's noticed the kind of communities that you're trying to build. But I guess the only reason you're trying to build this community is because you've been part of the community itself. What is one of the favorite parts for you, or where have you, made the most progress because of being part of a Web3 community? What's your favorite part about it? Yeah.
To be honest with you, apart from the Gambit community, I'm involved in several communities, and I think the biggest thing is education. Web3 is very, very new to a lot of people, including myself. Last year I spent a lot of time participating in various DeFi protocols and kind of learning the building blocks of what's being created. And there is no better way to start to understand any of that than to participate, right? Like get your MetaMask wallet, get your Solana wallet, fund it, go and do things like that. That's kind of step one. But step two is joining those communities and really digging in on what their goals are and what they're trying to accomplish. And you start to find, if you've got a very curious mindset, that when you participate in those communities, you're going to get a lot of value out of it. You're going to learn a lot. You're going to be able to ask questions, and really, really smart people are going to help you answer them. And so that is kind of the most important thing for me, and through my journey in Web3 and Web3 communities has been, it's a really great environment to learn, and I appreciate kind of all the communities for doing that. And so we're trying to take some of that and bring it to Gambit. And so we're very open to folks that have suggestions and questions, and we're answering them as we continue to build and make sure that people are excited.
For sure, man. Folks in Web3 love helping each other out, without expecting anything in return. That's been the most wonderful learning aspect for me, at least.
100%.
Lastly, any advice you have for any Web3 entrepreneur that's watching this right now?
I mean, the advice is start, right? I think, a lot of folks, we're at this edge where, a lot of people are like, hey, this is really cool. Like, should I go and I want to learn about it? And, there's kind of the learning. I can read and I can follow crypto coins. And then there's participating and saying, okay, I can buy some NFTs. I can, try this DeFi protocol and, earn some yield on a DeFi protocol. And then there's build, right? And so we're saying, you have to start, right? And so anybody who's thinking about jumping into Web3, I think it's important to say, hey, start somewhere, right? Whether it's participating in an existing community and helping, right? I think that's a great way for somebody who's on the hasn't quite committed to being a Web3 entrepreneur, but wants to get their feet wet. There's a lot of various protocols and projects and communities that encourage participation from their community, and whether it's software development and business development and marketing. No matter what role you're in, there's probably a community out there that you can participate in and start learning that way, and that could give you enough to start building yourself.
Definitely. I mean, I've been telling a lot of people to start visiting these Web3 meetups, because that's how I started. From being like a passive buyer of tokens to going to places, seeing what other people are doing, getting ideas, joining them, attending particular meetings. And I think in this whole decentralized work atmosphere where you haven't seen your own teammates, your own office mates, your own colleagues, it becomes even more important to be part of these meetup sessions and networking events. Something like Token 2049 that's happening right now in Singapore. It's a perfect place to find everyone under the same roof to forward your career goals.
That's right. I mean, I know a software developer who's participating in 6 projects, right? So he's developing, code for 6 projects. He's, earning, the whether it's bounty based or, some future issuance of that project's token. He's continuously earning, and he's gets to kind of work on some of the coolest stuff that exists. And
definitely,
he told me his goal is, I'm going to learn all this and then I'm going to go build something myself. Right. And so, there's various paths to get into Web3 as being an entrepreneur. And I think, again, the answer to anybody is start somewhere,
for sure. And here's another,
or start building yourself.
Definitely. I 100% agree with you. And another aspect was currently, I think you said that you have a dev heavy team right now, but moving ahead, like 3 months down the line, 4 months down the line, you need marketing folks with Web3 information. You need legal with Web3 information. You need a CA who's Web3 trained. So the non-coding jobs, that's what I would like to call them. These guys need to get on with the game at this point in time. That's what I feel.
That's right. And even marketing has changed for Web3 as well. This is where community, and we've been talking about community quite a lot, is community management is this whole new area of marketing.
I think digital marketing has sort of like mutated to community management.
That's right. And so, it becomes even more important to have the right people in. And so there are various, communities that are about community management. You can join a Web3 community management community with other like-minded people who are into community management and find opportunities that way, right? So it's amazing, kind of like how, a lot of these communities, again, self-organize, and they're very open to new folks coming in, joining, and participating.
There's also another amazing fact. I don't know if you've thought of it this way, but right now, I mean, we have certifications. We've been doing them for a few years, but there's nothing out there. There are no college degrees in blockchains, not extensively as of now. And most of the people working in Web3 are sort of self-learned, self-trained. So that's another crazy aspect of the brilliance of the Web3 community, current Web3 community worldwide.
That's right. And you're going to start to see a lot more educational platforms that pop up that will help people kind of have a more formal introduction to the Web3 world.
There's one right here.
Yeah, there you go.
I was trying to point to the logo with this virtual background. Wouldn't let me. Cool, man. Riaz, it's lovely having you here. You've been really insightful with this community management aspect. And I'm going to be following this really close, man, because you said you're going to be going towards cricket.
Yeah. At some point in the future, we were looking at a lot of different sports, but India is an amazing market, and cricket's a great sport. So, it only makes sense. And I'm aware of, how much people love cricket in India, and experiences
also,
like Dream.
It's a pretty crazy target audience because they are one of the highest crypto holders, and remittance is huge. So, at least in this audience, these guys love the sport and they have crypto. So
that's right.
It's a much easier sell over here than the other sports at this point.
Yeah, I mean, in general, I think there's a large crossover in sports and crypto, right? Like even in North America, you've got 2 major stadiums named after crypto brands. There's Crypto.com and FTX.
People started their DAO to figure out how to buy the NFL team and the NBA team. So
that's right.
There. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. It's just amazing, when you see a lot of these things happen.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it to somebody who was working at the NBA, and they said, you can't have anyone buying an NBA team just like that. And then, he had to kind of shut up because I sent him the link for it.
Yeah.
Amazing stuff, man. Wonderful speaking to you, man. Hopefully, I'll run into you soon. One of these events in the States. And
Awesome.
Thanks for your time. Cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers, Riaz.
Okay.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.